Hello and welcome to the first annual SIFCON, the Science Fiction and Fantasy Convention. I'm Lisa Richman. I also write as LL Richman, and I'll be your moderator for the hard science fiction panel. And I'm joined here today by three really talented people. And I'm going to start with the upper left-hand corner, which is Gerald and Kilby. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, yeah, I'm Gerald and Kilby. I'm a hard science fiction author. I write near future. One book is Colony Mars, so that's Mars, and this is more solar system, the belt, the asteroid belt. They're the kind of two series I write. One of them, the Mars series, has been optioned for a TV show, so whenever that happens.
Wonderful.
That's me.
All right. How about you, Stephanie?
I'm Stephanie Osborne, and I worked in the civilian and military space programs for a couple of decades. I have graduate and undergraduate degrees in astronomy, physics, chemistry, and mathematics. I kind of got overkill on that, but anyway. I write hard science fiction mystery. My principal, and unlike Gerald, I didn't think to grab a couple of books to show in front of the camera, but my principal series currently are the Displaced Detective series, the Division 1 series, and I'm writing with Richard Wyand in his Empire series.
Welcome, Stephanie and Catherine.
Hi, I'm Catherine Asaro. I did remember this today to bring my book. So, it's upside down. There it is. It's The Vanished Seas. You can see that. My name is bigger than the title, which I think means something good. It's from Baen. It's also science fiction mystery. It's distributed by Simon & Schuster. I have about 30 books out. This one came out this last summer during COVID. So my tour was all virtual. I've won the Nebula a couple times. I've been nominated for the Hugo quite a bit. I won one time, but I didn't really win because the Australian balloting system. I had more votes than anyone else, but then in the end, I lost by 2 votes. So, I don't know what happened, but I like to say that. Almost won. My doctorate is in chemical physics, theoretical chemical physics from the Harvard chemical physics program. So I'm kind of like Stephanie in that sense. I had to show expertise in physics, chemistry, and because I was a theoretician, I also had to show it in applied mathematics, which is really what I am. I'm an applied mathematician. So
Awesome.
That's me.
Well, welcome. And
can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I promised Arlen Andrews. We did a song called Ancient Ages. He wrote it. He's an engineer, but he wrote this gorgeous song called Ancient Ages. And I sang it, and it's online, and I wanted to mention that too.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys all for joining us today. My background is in radiation physics, radiation biology. I ran a linear accelerator for 10 years, and also split that time in television, film. Don't ask me. Those are the most disparate careers you could possibly have. And I'm a NASA brat. Grew up... my folks left Huntsville, Alabama. My dad and mom both worked for NASA, left there and with half the original astronauts and opened up the then Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston. So I grew up in the neighborhood with all of the original astronauts and would watch them parachute over the weekends and was surrounded by space flight and aviation. And so my career was kind of dictated to me as a young child. Okay, so now everyone watching knows who we are. And what we're going to talk about now is hard science fiction and how that differs from regular science fiction. And the first question I have for you all, there are lots of different scientific disciplines out there. And they're usually grouped as hard science fiction, the hard sciences, or the soft sciences or the social sciences. And for our purposes, engineering is, as far as I'm concerned, included in the sciences as well. So what branches of science do you draw upon when you write? And Catherine, let's start with you.
Oh, well, physics, of course. I love physics. And chemistry, my undergraduate degree at UCLA was actually in chemistry. So I love chemistry, I love physics. I use a lot of math in my writing. I work out all equations, I have great big folders. A lot of my research doesn't make it into the books because people already tell me I put too much in there. But
Info dump.
yeah, really.
Yes.
And I think I'm right. I don't even think I'm writing HardSF because I think, well, I'm backing off from this. And then I get a review that says she put too much of this info science dump in there. So I guess I'm not a good judge of when I have a lot of science. But, it's not
math, chemistry.
Yeah, it's not just those. I'll do any science. I just have to do more research. If, like I use psychology a lot too. So.
What about you, Gerald?
Engineering would have to be. That's kind of my background. So, I write hard sci-fi, what I would call hard sci-fi. But I look for kind of engineering problems. I'm kind of a MacGyver. So my stories, I'll set them in a plausible, world, future world. And then my protagonists have to get themselves out of various situations, but generally the way they get out of it is through some sort of an engineering solution.
So for you, it's not just the why, it's also the how.
Yeah. It's I have this theory about my sort of the mantra that I use concerning hard sci-fi is it's, I personally have to, it has to adhere to the laws of physics. And I'm dealing with technology that is real, that is current, and that if I take that current technology and I can extrapolate it out a bit, I can use it. But I have to do the research to find out what's happening within that technology. So in terms of, rocket engines, in terms of energy, in terms of anything at all, biology, nanotech, I have to do the research to satisfy myself that there's a route that I can take. And as you say, Catherine, most of it does not end up in the book.
Yeah.
But you can come across these. The problem with hard sci-fi in some respects with writing is that you do end up in tight situations where you just can't pull an alien from somewhere and say, I'll just bring an alien into it and that'll solve the problem. But you can't. No, I have to stick to the rules of my world,
I'm sensing a theme here, and that theme is that we're all kind of perpetual students as well. And I'm betting that Stephanie is exactly the same way.
I tell people that the day excuse me, my hay fever's really bad today. The day I stop learning is the day you can plant me 6 feet under. So yeah,
Here.
I'm pretty much the same. A lot of my science fiction tends to revolve around either astronomy or physics. But I don't hesitate. I've got a lot of friends in different disciplines. And I don't hesitate to pull from those other disciplines and use my friends as subject matter experts if I need to. I've got, for the mystery aspect, I've done some investigative work myself. I used to help a small Indian reservation's police department. But I also have an old high school chum who turns out he just recently retired from heading up the CSI team in my hometown. So if I have detective work, forensic work, and I want to double check it or find out how something is done, I contact him. I've got a PhD particle physicist. If I need information on in-depth, cutting-edge physics, more than likely he knows it. One of my uncles is an MD. If I need medical information, never mind the fact that I have several other friends who are also in the medical field, I contact them. So And like Jerry and Catherine said, um, I'll spend 3 or 4 hours researching to write one sentence.
Yeah.
To make sure it's right. I do have to I don't know about y'all, but I have to be kind of careful about not letting myself go down the rabbit hole.
Do you ever find that? I mean, I find, more often than not, when I go off and research something, I find something new that I can now bring into the.
Yes.
So what I was researching for is not really the point. It's the new stuff that I learn.
Yeah. It gives you ideas.
You get this kind of light bulb moment, and you go, "Oh, I can use that."
Yeah.
That's the purpose.
And it's like, oh, that answers how I should do this.
Yeah.
That's why I always tell people I have a terrible time writing fantasy. It's not because I wouldn't like to do it. I did write some fantasy books because they said they'd pay me a lot of money for it. So I said, I can write fantasy. But usually the light bulb will go off and I'll go, oh, I know a scientific reason why that magic would work. And then, of course, it becomes science fiction instead.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm the same
ahead.
way. I use, I draw a lot on radiation physics and plasma physics, which is very similar to radiation physics as far as this astrophysics aspect of it and the magnetosphere and the plasmasphere that we have. And also I use quantum electrodynamics a lot. And,
I remember that class.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, let's not go there.
So, and but there's so much. I mean, there's material science in there. When you think about, or do you have a torus? Do you have a McKendree cylinder or an O'Neill cylinder? I mean, how are your space stations built? There's so many different ways you can apply.
O'Neill cylinders are cool. I got into the O'Neill cylinders for the last book I was writing. I just got fascinated by them.
Yeah, another rabbit hole.
Of that too.
And anybody called O'Neill is good by me, So
I do space stations. I do rotating cylinders. I have these gigantic spaceships that are essentially
hollow lead asteroids was another one I used. Neo City, near Earth object, Neo.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean the joy is going, okay, this is like I can see how this could work from an engineering point of view, and I kind of work it out and how it could be built in my head, and then I go and check it out. And then the interesting thing really then is trying to, for the reader's point of view, is trying to describe that asteroid and what it's like inside, what the city would be like inside of that. With tech, this is kind of the hard science, with technology that they can relate to. So it feels like it's real or could be real.
Mm-hmm. So are you rotating the asteroids to give, like artificial?
Oh God, yeah, of course it has. Everything lives on the inner circumference,
That's so
I work out the rotation and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of that doesn't go into the book. I'm just trying to satisfy myself that my dimensions, my diameters are right. And a lot of my readers, I find that they're not overly critical about the hard science in it. I mean, there's some parts where I push it to the limits, but really I'm just pushing this to the limits for the benefit of the story. But I mean, I get reviews that say, I have no idea if the science is correct, but it's great.
But it's really, really cool.
It's really cool.
You always get that reader who does the math.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have one review in Colony Mars. The premise for the story is I was following Mars One. Do you ever remember the Mars One? Oh, back in the 10 years ago, there was a consortium, Dutch consortium, and they were planning to send people up to Mars and build this colony. And the catch was it was a one-way ticket. Okay, you could go, and that's it. You're there. So I sort of thought, that's an interesting concept. And what I did was imagine if the usual stuff that writers do is the what if. Well, what if they actually did this, and then what if it collapsed? So the story really opens with a sort of a mission coming up to find out how this colony collapsed. All contact is lost with it, and nobody knows what happened. So there's so the
The
six
Mars
sort of,
equivalent of
so you
Roanoke
can sort of
in North America.
you can imagine kind of 6 sensible NASA astronauts landing down, and they're walking over, and one of them picks up this piece of litter. It's the first thing he finds. Okay. And says, "Okay, we must be getting close." And he drops it, and I have in the book, it drifts down to the ground. And so said, "No, I would never do that. It would just fall. There's no atmosphere."
On Mars? Yeah.
I debate that.
Stephanie, did you say like Roanoke, as in Roanoke, New York?
Roanoke, Virginia.
Virginia.
The missing colony.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got invited to one of those colonies.
Well, one of the nicest, or one of the most fun emails I ever got from a fan, he wrote to me and he said, "Okay, you have all these moons on the planet." I think it was the planet Glory. I've worked out moon systems for a lot of planets. Mm-hmm. And he said, "I'm trying to figure it out, and it just doesn't make sense. You said, because I gave a lot of details about what these moons are like." And he said, "I'm not getting, when I put it into my equations, I'm not getting the behavior that you gave." He said, "No, but listen," he goes, "unless I assume that the mass you gave is in terms of the mass of our moon or some moon, something like that." Mm. And I remember looking at it going, "Oh God, what did I do?" I knew I'd worked it out, but it had been like years. So I went and picked it up, and I had indeed done that. I put it in terms of the mass of our moon. So I gave him all the numbers. He put it in, he said, "Oh, it all works now." And then he did all these details, and he put it up on the web. He said,
"Excellent,
cool."
So you have to really, you have to really, you've got the full spectrum of reader. You've got the fans who will do the math, but then you've got the fans who, like you said, Jerry, they don't really care, don't understand, but they, they really enjoy it.
That's probably, I wouldn't say they don't really care, but it has to work in the world. You can't. Mm-hmm. You can't.
As long as it's internally consistent.
As long as it's.
Well,
that's a good way of putting it. But you have to, whatever you do, with all of the research that we all do, and all of the rabbit trails that we go down, and all of the massive amounts of information that we consume in order to write this, we still have to be able to make it so relatable and so accessible to anyone, so that it still has to be story.
Some of my books crossed over to the romance audience, because like my first book is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet with a good ending. They don't die. People think they do, but they don't really. And it had big time crossover to romance. And the comments I get is not what you would have expected. Romance readers would write to me and say, "Oh, I really like what you did with that engine. It's nice to read a book where da-da-da, but I'm not sure this part of the thrust would work." They'd give me a really good comment. And then I'd get a male reader saying, "Well, I really enjoyed your book, but I want to know, did they have a baby after they got married?" It just doesn't break down the way you expect.
I've got one series that I started a couple years back, my Division 1 series. And I decided to go off on a tangent slightly from my usual writing, in that it's a little bit more space opera. It's my take on the urban legend of Men in Black and aliens and all of that stuff. So I take all of those urban legends and do my utmost to turn them on their ear. So there's a lot of humor in it. But it's also a lot of action, adventure, and stuff. And so people read it as space opera. And what they don't realize is that I still sit down and work out, how does this weapon work? How does that spacecraft fly? How does this power pack work? So it's really kind of
you're still
you
trying
can
to
read it. You can read it. You can read it as
lots of different levels.
Yeah, you can read it on multiple levels. You can read it as space opera. One of my beta readers is that particle physicist, though.
Yeah.
And he is constantly trying to tell me, "No, you need to put this in there because it would work." And I'm like, "Jim, no, I don't want to do that. I want to keep it at this can be read as."
That's why appendices were created.
That's what I started doing because people, you know, I mentioned that first book. It was full, I had equations in the text. You know, I had numbers, da da da. You know, and some of my, you know, I would get a lot of readers who said, "Well, I really enjoyed it and I liked all the relationships, but I just skipped those parts."
I kind of like all the complaints that people that you hear from people who read David Weber, and you know, then right in the middle of a big battle scene, there's 7 pages of Warshawski sale descriptions. And
I have a lot of David Weber readers because I also write real strong female characters.
Yeah.
But I discovered I could put it in appendices and then I can, nerd out to my heart's content.
There's also something else that I think hard science fiction does, and I want to hear your opinions on it. I think it's almost like you're tricking people. You're tricking readers into learning something by entertaining them, and you're slipping a little knowledge in it. And I think that's kind of pretty cool sometimes.
I've actually had readers come back and tell me that thank you. I learned something today from reading your book. And I'm like, well, okay. I didn't really, I'm glad you did, but why, did I write it wrong? Did it come across it? And he's no. I read it and then I went off and I looked it up. And I'm like,
you liked the book enough to it fired the imagination enough.
Yes.
To where.
Yeah.
What about you, Jerry? What do you think?
My kind of, I suppose, goal in a sense is that you can read the story and forget that it's actually hard sci-fi. You're just in the story. And it plays out. Well, I mean, one series plays out in Mars and Colin. The other series plays out, throughout the solar system, the inner solar system, the near solar system. But you can immerse yourself as a reader. You should be able to immerse yourself in the story so much that the world that they live in just becomes real. Okay, and as long as I can maintain that illusion, and I can do it accurately or as accurately as I can, that's kind of where I try to pitch myself.
You're not breaking that fourth wall.
No, I'm not. I'm not doing something that's inconsistent with the world. I mean, the Colony Mars series is kind of is easier in a sense because you could visualize. I mean, all that is based on research that I did and how, how a colony could be set up and what they would need and everything that's there. So for the average reader, when they're reading it, they're going, oh, okay, this could actually happen. This could be real. And that's, but I'm not trying to be clever in that. I'm trying to, create a fantastically hard sci-fi world. What I'm trying to do is create an entertaining story for them. So when you get into the story, then it's the story comes first. So, yes. I want to create drama and conflict and tension, and character development and arcs, and I want to bring them through the story with plenty of action and entertainment.
We've got an audience question, guys.
Yes, we do, but we're going to hold that to the very end because I'm going to get through the next couple of questions and then we'll reach the audience questions. So, can someone without a scientific background write science fiction?
Yeah, sure.
They write hard science fiction.
Yes.
You can write, like we were talking about. We do research, right, on the sciences that are not our bailiwick. There's no way anybody, even a scientist, like Steph and I were saying, well, we had to show expertise in math and physics and chemistry, but we don't know it all.
No.
I mean, I'm good at basic chemistry and basic physics because I taught them at the college level. But if you want to extrapolate beyond that, there's two ways you can do it. One is and what a lot of people write science fiction, that's not what we would call really hard, is they just say, well, I have this engine. This engine is able to get around the problems with the speed of light. Or like Ursula Le Guin with her Ansibles, faster than light communication, and it just is. She doesn't try to give the science and do wrong science. The alternative, if you don't know it, is, and if you don't feel that you have the background to read, these very scientific papers or whatever, or books, is ask somebody to help you. A lot of scientists, a lot of engineers are happy to give, to take a look at it.
Do it all the time. for beginning writers that haven't published their first book yet, all the way up to guys like John Ringo. I have sat down and run calculations and all kinds of stuff to help them get it accurate.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I'm nowhere near the, intellectual level of you guys, that's for sure. But, but my background would be more kind of engineering. So, but I have been I love that stuff, and I have loved that stuff since I was knee high to a rabbit. And I will read all about it, and I'm reading Wired and Omni, and I just devour it. I love it. So
we need
when
Catherine. We need to introduce him to Arlen. They would get along.
I was thinking the same.
So when I come to writing, my natural tendency will go to hard science fiction, because that's the stuff I really like. I love it, and I love figuring out the problems and the engineering, and I love creating those kind of worlds that are they're amazing to me anyway. But that said, so if you're trying to write hard sci-fi, I think you have to have a love for science and engineering, even though you may not be, a doctorate, or, you may not have anything like that, but you just need to have it in your bones. Okay?
That's a good point, because I think every author that I've ever helped with that's the way they've been. Yeah.
But if you're writing, say, space opera, there's no better example than something like Ian M. Banks, the Scottish author. He wrote a big, hugely successful culture series. And Elon Musk's too. The drone ships where the Falcon 9 first stage lands down. Yeah. The two names are named after ships from the culture series from Ian M. Banks. Yes. But Ian M. Banks has no formal technical training of any description. But he writes these just, incredible imagination, just mind-blowing imagination. But of course, it's all, none of it's real science, I suppose. It's not hard sci-fi, but it's great science fiction,
Absolutely. Okay, so kind of dovetailing off of that question, you guys have all heard the famous quote from Arthur C. Clarke. He famously said, in one of his 3 laws, that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Does this impact how you approach your writing of science fiction?
Well, no, but people tell me they've seen that in my work. I have spaces, universes based on something called Hilbert theory in mathematics. And I apply all the principles of mathematics to create this space. And if you don't know quantum mechanics and how, eigenfunctions work, and how you create, infinite dimensional spaces from all these infinite series of functions, it sounds like magic, but it's not. And I tried to describe it in the books, and I realized, I can't get it all in. So in some of my books, I wrote these appendices where I went into a lot of detail about how it works, because it's like, I think it was both Gerald and Stephanie said it, your plot comes to a screeching halt if you put a big info dump in the middle.
I have a tendency, I've gone off on M theory a couple of times in different books. One in what was to have been the first book of a series with Travis Taylor called Extraction Point, and then I also used M theory in the first couple of my Displaced Detective novels. So yeah, I find cutting edge research and then extrapolate. So, it's sometimes that gets me in trouble. Sometimes it works really well.
I tried my hand at quantum physics as a lay person. So the last book, the Belt series, I had this kind of idea about, using, it's called entanglement, so that'll give you a clue to what's going on in the book. And I was getting into this whole idea of subliminal communications using quantum entanglement, which is not possible. Okay, I know that. So don't, okay.
It's a very cool idea.
And I was going, damn it, it's not possible. Damn it, I can't use it. I was going, no, I've got
I'm
to find
still not convinced. I'm still not convinced.
They managed to entangle. They managed to entangle
Yeah, and I know all that, and there's
Yeah.
Chinese satellites and encryption and stuff like that. But it's subliminal communications is what I wanted,
Well, but it's your extrapolation. Readers, if
So
you get the
so
basic.
what I extrapolated it out was, this kind of was formulating the plot for the book. I was saying, okay, now I'm not a mathematician, and although I'm pretty good at maths, but I'm not a physicist. I'm not formally trained, so I'm reading this stuff, trying to get my limited brain wrapped around it, and I'm going, well, this.
Any engineer, wait, I'm going to stop you right there. Any engineer does not have a limited brain.
Okay.
Bingo.
Moving on.
So I was going, this isn't possible. How am I going to solve this? Because if it's hard sci-fi, I need something that's possible. So what I figured out was, I said, okay, I could use quantum computing in here. So I had these kind of very sophisticated quantum computers. And I said, well, the two quantum computers could use this entanglement to communicate with each other. And that's sufficiently, that would just about solve it. Okay. And then what I did during the book was, when they discover this device, there's all these people saying, it's not possible, it's not possible. So they're kind of the voice of the reader who's saying, it's not possible. And the other guys are going, well, it seems to work.
That's a really good trick to use.
It's a bit of a trick.
To have one of your characters say that's not possible.
Yeah, you always try and have a character who's you try and anticipate what the reader is saying, and you have a character that's going to voice that. So then the reader's back into the book again, because they have a character that takes their viewpoint on it, and that in a sense convinces them that the rest of it is real, or it doesn't really matter if it's real. I'm still back into the story again.
Yeah, I think readers will let you have it if you acknowledge.
Yeah, that you're pushing it. I even put a little caveat. I write, but every now and again I do push it to the limit.
I like the Facebook user's comment here. Seems to work is good for me in a novel.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, you sort of touched on it when you were talking about entertainment and education. I mean, books do those two things. I mean, they either educate or they entertain, and some good books will do both. I mean, that's why we read books, for entertainment and education. So in a good book, if you can, from a novel, I think from a fictional novel point of view, your primary focus is entertainment, because people are putting their money down. They want to go home, sit down, they want to read this book, and they want to be entertained. And if you can educate them in something, or you can bring them to a world that could be possible, and they go, wow, that's that, and then you can take them off into that world, then that's what they're paying for. That's the money they're putting down. But it's got to be the entertainment, I think, part of it.
And along the science fiction spectrum, and it is a really broad spectrum. I mean, you go from hard science fiction all the way down to steampunk or science fantasy, or it covers a lot of ground.
Cyberpunk.
Yeah, you can get into it. You can insert yourself as a reader in just about any point, to whatever degree you want your brain to work. If you're feeling like, okay, I just want some mind candy, you can go on to the,
the Ian M. Banks or Adrian Tchaikovsky, or where he does that whole series where they see the planet with now my apologies today, I'm probably not getting this right, but they see the planet with a sort of an intelligence gene which gets picked up by the spiders, the arachnids, and then they visit that planet X thousand of years, and all of a sudden there's this whole series of sophisticated spider civilization. But he writes the book from the point of view of the spider. It's
cringe. I'm arachnophobic. I'm very arachnophobic.
Yeah, I don't think I'd like to visit that.
Totally out there. It's a great book. And then the next one series he did it as cephalopods. So it was octopus and squid, even more out there. Adrian Tchaikovsky.
The more research they do on octopi in particular, I'm not convinced they're not intelligent as it is.
Well, you would read this book and you go, wow, I didn't realize that. Because this guy is... again, I could be doing him a disservice here, but he does know what he's talking about. Let's put it that way. It's fascinating. It was a fascinating book.
Similar to, it reminds me of Jennifer Wells's Fluency series. where that's it's a different kind of science fiction because she's dealing with linguistics and dealing with an alien civilization and the whole concept of communication. And that opens up an entirely new set of tropes that you can address in science fiction as well. How relatable do you think your science needs to be to your reader, and do you risk losing their engagement if your science is too out there? I mean,
it's, you never know. I mean, when I wrote The Vanished Seas, I didn't think it was HardSF. It's a mystery. But one reviewer was just appalled by all the HardSF in it. Another reviewer said, oh, well, this is less, hard than her other books. I think it's the reader rather than the writer who decides that. But to be relatable, I mean, I don't write what it's a couple hundred years in the future. And I don't write what I really think it'll be like a couple hundred years in the future because I don't think that'll be relatable to people. Will be so.
I agree completely. I'm so glad you said that.
I had some things happen. Earth had a virus war, both computer and human virus war, which is a little more. Now we're in the middle of a pandemic, so it wasn't quite as fanciful as I thought. But, I did things so that it remained at a level that was where the technology wasn't so advanced that the people didn't even seem human.
Well, I'm because I write kind of fairly near future. A lot of it is relatable, and I try and make it relatable. And try and kind of how I would see, because I focus on space exploration. So it's, realistically, could we have a colony on Europa in say 100 years or 150 years? I'm going probably maybe 100 and 150 years, and what would that look like? So I think a lot of what I would write would be relatable to those people until I get into the whole, quantum entanglement, quantum computers ruling the world.
What do you think about The Expanse? I mean,
I've mixed feelings about The Expanse.
Really?
I like The Expanse, and I love the hard sci-fi in it, and I particularly love the detective guy in it. I really like that character. And I read a couple of the books, but they kind of, they lost me eventually. Once they got into the aliens, I was going, right, that's me, I'm out of here. Aliens.
It gets different.
Oh, okay. I just came up with another question. Let's talk about aliens, because there are lots of different schools of thought on whether, in hard science fiction, whether or not aliens exist or they don't.
I use an entire galaxy full of aliens in my Division 1 series because that's kind of the trope. That's the urban legend thing. On the other hand, when I'm writing in Rich Wyand's universe, the Empire series, he's got a galactic civilization of nothing but humans, and they're all descended from Earth. And he hasn't.
My memory fails me. There's a reason why. There's a theory that says that we're it.
Yeah.
Out there.
Well, you play around with the Fermi paradox long enough, and you get some interesting outcomes there. And one of those is that there has been, but there isn't any longer. Another is that we're the first. It depends on what numbers you plug into the Drake equation, really.
Yeah, and it's so ambiguous what the right numbers are.
Yeah. We have a database of 1 point.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I struggle with aliens from a hard sci-fi point of view. There's a couple of reasons. There's, on the one hand, I don't want to write. I don't write kind of the alien marauding hordes coming down to take over the Earth, and it's a fight between us and the aliens. I mean, it's not really what I'm that interested in. At the same time, I could, in a hard sci-fi sense, have a research colony on Europa that is exploring, maybe a single-celled,
Yeah.
That's
the difference between
creature.
life and intelligent life.
Okay, because that, to me, even in the context of Fermi paradox, where the possibility that there's always civilization, but that to me would be plausible. Okay, so but to sort of land on Mars or land on Europa and you're eaten by some creature from the depths doesn't seem that plausible.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So unless you go full alien and it's into alien wars, you can't beat a good alien book every now. Alien the film. It's probably one of the classic sci-fi movies of all time.
Well, Ripley is a real classic.
Oh, she's class. Yeah. I read that as a book. Funny enough, before I saw the movie, it was probably a book written when the movie was coming out. So I don't think the movie was made from a book. And I just thought this was the most amazing thing I'd ever read in a long time, and I couldn't wait to see the movie. And I read most of the next of the series in books before I went and saw the movie.
I think the whole alien thing. I do and I don't. I have a lot of alien life. It's not a lot of it's not intelligent.
Yeah.
Biospheres and types of life, and it's not. They're not mammals transplanted.
Right.
Only the planets that have been terraformed and have genetically engineered animals from Earth are the only ones that really have animals as we think of them. So in that sense, have alien life. But I do have a few intelligent, like they use these machines. They call them machines of the Ruby Empire in my Scullion saga, which has I think almost 20.
20?
I don't know how many it is. I lose track.
There are a lot.
If you write a lot of books, you begin to lose track after a while.
Yeah, but these are ancient machines that allow humans to interact with them, and the humans use them to do things. But the machines themselves are intelligent. They're just intelligent in a different place, in a different space than the humans. And the humans don't really understand them. And every now and then they get more involved with this race of intelligent, whatever these are. And so gradually over the course of the saga, I'm revealing more. And there's also the mystery, which everybody wants to know. When are you going to solve it? Somebody moved humans from Earth, during the Stone Age, 5,000 years, 6,000 years. Well, it's complicated because they moved them in time too. But they moved them to this planet and then disappeared.
So how do you guys deal with time? Do you get into time? Shifts,
time dilation.
Travel, time dilation.
A little,
yeah.
I'm a physicist. I do special relativity. How could I not?
Yeah.
In my Division 1 series, because it's basically space opera, I postulate that they solve the Alcubierre drive problem, and I just work with it like that. So no, there isn't a time dilation effect there, and that's really the other than in the Empire series, we get around it with hyperdrive. So that Rich created that universe. He worked it out. He's a physicist. I assumed he had it figured, so I just kind of went with it.
I used the Scharnhorst effect and Casimir bubbles, and also
but a lot of theoretical physics is theoretical.
It's not even theoretical.
You can do things with math that you can't necessarily actually do, but you can do it with math. And if you can do it with math, you can extrapolate to some.
I was watching a really interesting documentary on some place where it's a kind of a school or university or institution for theoretical physicists.
Which one?
I can't remember the name of it, sorry. But it was just a building full of theoretical physics.
Is it Princeton?
Okay, I can't remember. I don't know where it was. They were from all over the world, and the one thing I kind of took away from it is that none of these guys really know what they're talking about.
Hey, I've been at institutes like that.
Because they all seem to have different opinions, and they go, "Oh no, I don't agree with so and so. His theories are a bit out there, And then somebody else is saying the same thing. Oh, God, these guys don't know what.
Not that I ever said that. Oh, you got our number.
I'm kind of in the same camp that you all are. That Jerry is. I don't have aliens in any of my books. I do have alien life as far as chiral life is concerned. That there's one solar system out there that has the polarized light, and it's allowed it to develop chirally. So but again, it's not intelligent life. So
yeah, I think an alien book is it's not a hard sci-fi book, really.
I agree.
I mean, you can bring in alien life,
fiction,
yeah,
but it's not hard.
Okay, I'm gonna argue with you on that.
Okay.
There's a book by Greg Egan. Some people may have heard me say this before. Greg Egan wrote. Actually, I read it when in the novella form. It's called Wang's Carpets. The whole book is this gorgeous, using mathematics to develop an intelligent alien life that's unlike anything that we found. And the moment when he introduced what was the intelligence, and it turned out they'd found these mats floating on this planet, and they just thought they were big mats of like seaweeds. And then they found out something's going on. I don't remember the details because it's been a couple decades since I read it. But the mats, you had the Fourier transform, what was going on in the mats. And when you did the Fourier transform, it came out that these were intelligent responses that these mats were doing. It was a Fourier transform version of intelligence. And I just went, it was like this big eureka moment. I went, oh my God, brilliant. And I tried to tell people, and they would look at me and go, what?
The other thing I find about using aliens is that you're now getting into fantasy, okay?
Yeah.
Space fantasy, because you can just dream up anything, really.
Yeah.
But this wasn't. It was very rigorously worked out.
No, but in the context of, say, a hard sci-fi book, once you start writing and getting into aliens, the world is, the universe is you can write anything you want. There's no limits to it in a sense. You can have.
But you can make it hard by making your aliens scientifically believable. I mean, Greg's Carpets, which I think became Permutation City. I think that was a novel. Is considered a classic of HardSF.
Because ultimately you've got
very few people are like Greg Egan. I mean, I would say most writers are in the camp that Jerry mentioned, which is that if they're going to introduce aliens, the average science fiction writer out there is going to be,
because I do get reviews. People would write reviews saying, "Oh, if you're interested in reading a book that doesn't have marauding space aliens in it, this is your one." I'm kind of sick reading books about marauding space aliens in it, because I just think there's no limit to it. From a writing point of view, maybe I'm coming at this from a different point of view. From a story point of view, once you bring aliens into that as a concept, then everything becomes a concept. Everything you can bring into it, then there's no.
Well, you've got an awfully big universe out there too.
Yeah, it's true.
So I mean, you look at the chemistry. There are certain chemical elements that lend themselves to the kinds of structures that can produce life. Then you start looking at a stellar system, and you discover that of those elements, these are in quantity. But you only find them in the correct temperatures, pressures, etc., within certain Goldilocks zones around stars.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with. I don't disagree with the concept that yes, there could well be an intelligent alien civilization or civilizations. I don't disagree with that. What I'm trying to get at is more, so from a hard side point of view, you could certainly work out the maths and say, yeah, that is possible. But what I'm saying is we don't know what that is. So in the context of hard sci-fi, if you don't know what that is, then it can be anything you want it to be. Okay.
And I think that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Maybe what you're saying to me is I should broaden my mind.
Well, but the thing about, Stephanie, what you're saying kind of applies to that, because that's assuming life as we know it. You know, you have to be within the habitable zone. You need the certain chemistry and elements. But that doesn't mean that's the only way you could have life develop.
No, you're right, and I've actually looked at that, and I can thank Star Trek for that. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
Do you remember the episode "The Devil in the Dark"?
Yes, I use that as an example.
So you and then if you sit down, you're a chemist. You look at the chemistry of carbon. You look at the chemistry of silicon. Okay, they're virtually identical. So why not?
The structure, the electronic structure. The thing about the Devil in the Dark is they acknowledge that. It's like we were talking about before. They acknowledge, well, silicon-based life has these problems because, but. So that's great, but then they get to this ridiculous thing where these pizzas drill through.
I mean, the concept was great. The execution a little less so.
Okay, before we wrap up, I'm going to bring us right back to questions. There is one question for the panel from the audience that I do want to ask real quick, and then we're going to have to wrap up. And that is, do you think character-driven hard science fiction is a subgenre? It doesn't search well since character-driven is too general and all novels have a character plot. But is there a name for hard sci-fi that emphasizes characters over plot? Or is it then no longer hard sci-fi?
Yes. It's called good science fiction.
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
I get people debate that with me all the time. When I first started writing, people would say, your books can't be hard SF. And I'd say, why not? The science is all good and extrapolation, blah, blah. And they said, oh, yeah, that's all fine. But you're concentrating on the characters and the relationship, and there's a love relationship. You know? I was like, and they would literally look at me and say, it doesn't feel like hard SF.
It goes back to the story.
But it does. I don't get that anymore. I think now publishers pretty much, you have to have good character driven, even in the hard SF, or people won't buy it. And if you buy it, then it's the character. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's the characters that people relate to. It's the characters that your readers glom onto and that take them carry them all the way through the book. Why would you not write something that was character driven?
Well, they used to say that, the writers of hard SF a long time ago, it's not the characters, it's the science. And you could get it. And I think to some extent that could be because a lot of the characters were tropes that people related to. The engineer, Gerald, you would have fit right in there.
Yeah. It's a really good question. And I definitely appreciate the question because, from where I come from in terms of writing hard sci-fi, it is all basically character-driven sci-fi, as opposed to hard sci-fi that is, giving you the maths to extrapolate something out that this is a possibility. What I try to do with hard sci-fi is I try and create a story that becomes believable. That I can see myself in this colony on Mars. It's just everything just works. It's fun. This is it, and then you get into the drama of the characters that have to exist there and survive there, which is character driven. But if you think of something like, say, The Martian, which to me would be classic hard sci-fi. That's my vision of it. I know there's an earlier vision of hard sci-fi which is much harder, but that would to me would be kind of character driven hard sci-fi.
Yep, I agree.
I think.
Well, thank you guys so much. What an interesting conversation, and thank you so much for joining us. If there was one question that we did not get to, and it was someone was asking about a Trojan asteroid, you can email Stephanie at stephanie-osborne.com, and she promises she'll answer that. Real quick, just 10 seconds. Give me a quick 10-second synopsis of where viewers can find you on the web and what your latest book is.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Jared.
GeraldandKilby.com. That's easy enough. Latest book is, there's a 6th book in this series, the Colony Mars series, Colony 6 Mars. That's out next week. There'll be 2 more books, I think, in the Belt series next year. And I have a short story coming out in an anthology around February when Perseverance is going to land on Mars in Jezero Crater, which I had the good fortune to put my colony in Jezero Crater. So that's where it's, just, I don't know, the gods were smiling upon me when I decided to write the whole thing in Jezero Crater. But so that's coming out in February. So next week there'll be a new Colony 6 Mars, and you'll get me at geraldandkilby.com.
Stephanie.
You can find my books at stephanie-osborne.com. I've also got an Amazon author page. My most recent books out are the third trilogy in the Empire series, the Imperial Police trilogy. I'm getting ready to, I'm finishing up on book 13 in the Division 1 series. And that one will be entitled Bygones. And that'll come out in January. Then I've got, I'm re-releasing with a new publisher the Displaced Detective series.
Great. Thank you. And Catherine.
I'm at catherineasaro.net. It's .net, not .com. I'm also at patreon.com/CatherineAsaro. If you're not familiar with Patreon, it's a way to support. You become patrons of an author you want to support so that, they get an income and they can spend more time on their writing. I mean, we all get an income, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
There's income and then there's
Patreon, Patreon.com/CatherineAsaro. And finally, I'm doing a giveaway. The first 3 people who email me can pick any one of my books. I have a whole bunch of extras of books. So I will give you can pick one of my books, and if I have an extra, which I do for most of them. My email is Asaro, my name, at pobox.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And you can see my chiral agent is book 1. The third book in the Biogenesis War universe is coming out in January. It's Chiral Justice. And I'm at biogenesiswar.com or lisarichman.net, or you can reach me on Facebook at my Facebook page, LL Richman. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Stephanie, Gerald, Catherine, for joining us. This has been a pleasure. If you have any questions, join us on the Discord. Ask questions in Facebook. Ask questions on YouTube. We will get back to you, we promise. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.